Hi ladies, my goodness, I cannot believe we are here at the end of this particular group. I hope and I pray that each one of you has enjoyed your last 5 days-ish with me. I understand that some of you wanted to just observe, and that is totally fine. Some of you gave a shot at some of the recipes. Whatever or however it is that you chose to apply this particular group, and the recipes that I shared with you, it was totally up to you, and that's fine with me. I do love hearing feedback and victories on certain areas in the area of meal planning, because it is definitely an area that I have found to be so effective countless times with just the life that we live, the busy that we are a part of, or that, sorry, I thought my strap was showing. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time and just share with you my own personal journey. We have so many new gals that I have been able to connect with, and thank you to those of you who have invited your friends and your family for me to be able to get to know them a little bit more. And so I wanted to just kind of rewind a little bit and share with you first and foremost that I have not always been physically fit or the meal planning mom. In fact, I was everything that I am not today, and it was a series of events that have taken place that has brought me to the place that I am today, and it would be a disservice on my part to not share with you the many victories that I have experienced through trials. So I will start with saying that I have had a total of 4 pregnancies. I have had 1 miscarriage in between my baby and my 5-year-old. And when I had my 5-year-old, my husband and I, rewind. I was a single mom. My husband and I, when we were dating and courting and just discussing non-negotiables, one of the goals was for me to be a stay-at-home mom and my husband to be the sole provider. So we worked our tails off to pay off debt and establish a savings to allow for me to stay home and his income be the sole provider. And that didn't go as planned. He actually, as I resigned, he ended up unemployed, and I resigned because that was what we felt being led to do. And so I had, at that time, he was just over 4 months old. I had a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old unemployed, and we had all of our debt paid off. We were at zero obligations to anybody, but we had savings that we were then living off of because we had nothing to replenish that. And so that savings quickly went away, leaving us to be continued unemployed, both of us. For whatever reason, we were denied unemployment. I'm telling you, there was nothing coming in, and we were led to make a decision, which was to let our place go that we were living in and use our savings to live off of for the following year. And that put my husband in a state of depression, and he gained just over 150 pounds in that time, from that time until current day. But he did gain most of it in a very short period of time. His source of comfort has oftentimes been food. And for me, not realizing it, I wasn't nourishing myself. I was breastfeeding and not eating very well. And when I did eat, I wasn't eating often, and when I did eat, it wasn't the greatest of things. And so you couple that with him being depressed, me experiencing postpartum depression, it was a really tough time. And I was invited to my cousin's wedding, and I didn't want to go. And not because I wasn't excited for her, but because I did not own anything that I could fit in. I was in the home, and so I was used to just wearing stretchy pants or sweats and a loose tops which were then at that time not fitting me any longer. I was just overall just very lacking joy. And so my sister brought out her largest set of clothing with confidence that I would be able to fit it, and I didn't fit it. And I was staying with my sister at that time. And I remember laying on the bed and her shoving a pair of pants up me, just trying her hardest to get those up my hips. And I ended up having to tuck my pants in and it not fit. And then the top, like the buttons, I had to keep a very close eye on them. It wasn't even dressy. You know, usually you dress differently for a wedding that you are celebrating marriage, and I could barely do somewhat of business casual. So I went to that wedding, and then I was snapped a photo, almost side profile of myself, which was the picture that I shared with you as I shared I was going to go live. It was that picture. Now, most people would say, well, you had a 10-month-old, you got to give yourself grace. You know, it's normal to have baby weight. Well, the fact of the matter is, when I went for my 6-week, you know, checkup, post-op checkup, I had already lost all of my baby weight. So it was my fault. I had done that to myself. And it was that moment where I saw myself, I was embarrassed. It was that, oh my gosh, please take me off of this tag. I don't want people to see me this way. And I'd like to say that at that point I said, okay, that's it, I'm gonna make changes. No, it wasn't. I still carried on doing what I did and just ignoring the fact that I felt exhausted. I was exhausted. I felt defeated. I was depressed. There were so many things that I was trying to suppress. And, you know, it was just a really miserable time. And then I ended up, it was in December, I ended up experiencing vertigo it was during the time my husband and I got married in December. So it was our 2nd year anniversary. All of this we were experiencing in our 2nd year of marriage. And I had vertigo for 3 weeks where I was out. I was down and out, and I could barely get up without falling over. You know, I was receiving help like from family and friends, and the only thing I could do for my then 10-month-old or my baby, I was nursing him, was nurse him. So they would bring him to me to nurse, and then other than that, I really couldn't care for my family. And that was a really big wake-up call. We were uninsured. I had to end up I experienced what's called Bell's palsy, and so I was like numb on all one side. And I had went to like a local clinic, and they said, you need to go to the emergency room. And I was like, oh yay, yeah, sign me up for thousands of dollars more to be you know, indebted to somebody. So we decided it was wise for me to go into the emergency room. After hours upon hours and med upon med, the results were inconclusive, and told me to follow up with my primary care doctor, which at that point I didn't have a primary care doctor. I didn't have insurance to follow up with a primary care doctor. So at that time I had to make a decision, and my husband came across on Netflix. Because we were homeless essentially, we would house sit for various people, and so we house sat for a family that they had Netflix, and on there kind of was the last thing that they watched, which was a documentary called Hungry for Change. That opened up so much for me, and allowed for me to really have a better gauge and understanding of what good nutrition looks like. And so at that point, one of the doctors that was in there, who was also the doctor from the documentary Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead with Joe Cross, and his name is Joel Fuhrman, and he has a website, and he has a book and a cookbook. It's called Eat to Live, and it's just an overall plant-based lifestyle, and that was something that I committed to trying out. And I opened up a can of worms. Really, I watched pretty much every documentary that you could think of. I have a list of documentaries that I've watched, and as new ones come out, I am just so passionate about educating myself and making sure that I am informed. And that is why I have an overall idea of, or my desire is to live overall well. From the water I drink, from the dish soap that I use on my children and my hands, all the way to the food that we put into our bodies. And I would like to say that from that point, you know, I ate well, I lost a ton of weight like that, super quick, within 6 weeks of following a plant-based lifestyle, fruits, vegetables, legumes, and grains. I lost, in 6 weeks, I lost 40 pounds. It was super quick. It was transformation for me, but then I started going back into my old ways and my old habits. My husband at that time got a job, we got our own place, and I'd like to say things got better, but they got worse because he wasn't making enough to cover our base needs, and so then we started incurring debt, And it was just a really tough time. We found out we were pregnant for the third time, so now this is our third pregnancy. And I was doing a program called T25 during that time. So I was doing T25. My husband and I were bickering and disagreeing on a lot of things, specifically in the area of finances. And we had a really, really tough falling out. It was Christmas Eve, and then we went for our first appointment New Year's Eve, December 31st, to find out that the baby had no heartbeat. And when it was dated back, as far as measurements go, that the baby essentially passed away on December 24th, which was dated back to when we were arguing very heavily and I wasn't sleeping well and caring for myself well. And so that was really hard for both my husband and I, and something that we suppressed for a very, very long time. I ended up miscarrying, or choosing to miscarry naturally. It took me about 30 days. I definitely felt like my working out, and then of course the stress, all in all, to say that it was not neither one of our faults. That was just God's will for my life, and this baby, it was not time for us to experience this baby on earth. But it did not come overnight for me to face that reality. And I ended up miscarrying on January 28th, and I hemorrhaged, and so we ended up having to rush to the emergency room, where it was just a really bad nightmare, if you will. My husband witnessed me pass out 3 different times. It was just a really, really scary experience. I was 0.3 points away from needing a blood transfusion. They didn't give me one, and because of that, I ended up having to restore my own blood. You know, my bone marrow needed to develop my own blood again. So I was put on bed rest. Well, in the midst of that time, we got into this amazing apartment, which is what's called affordable housing. When we were unemployed and had no income, we had applied for various different places. It usually takes like 5 years to get in. We got in after 9 months, just when our credit cards were about to max out and we could no longer pay on them. It was just in the nick of time. But I was not able to pack my home. I was not able to unpack my home. I was not able to move. I was on bed rest because I miscarried January 28th, and we moved into this place February 1st. Talk about an act of God in so many ways. I'm sure you guys could see kind of just God's footprints all over my life in this area. I'd like to say that, okay, you know, we got into this place, we were experiencing a little bit of fresh air, if you will. We also experienced, my niece passed away. She had a birth defect, and so she passed away March 28th, and we just faced, it was what we call a year of grief. It was 2014, and it was a really, really, really tough year. I experienced phantom movements during the time that I would have been pregnant. I experienced phantom letdowns during the time I would have had a new baby, phantom crying. I didn't sleep for that first year. I didn't take care of myself. I went back to much of my old ways. I guess it would have been 50-50 as far as like my commitment one way or the other. And one of the things was that I was doing the T25 program, and I was always fearful that, well, what if I'm pregnant right now and I do a workout and I miscarry again? It was something, as the 1 year anniversary was approaching, I said, I need to just move forward. I need to face my giant, and you know, finishing this program was something I felt I needed to do, and so I did it. I started on January 1st, not because it's a New Year's resolution. It just so happened that the anniversary date of us finding out there was no heartbeat was December 31st, so I said I'm going to just do it January 1st. So from January 1st until completion of the program, it was the first time that I had ever followed a program to the T and completed it, and I shared about it. And then at that time was when I was asked to coach, and I sought a couple different coach opportunities, because it was definitely something I thought, oh my gosh, I could really encourage people through my hardships. And that's what I was